The teacher who broke my heart in high school just became my stepbrother. It all started on a night soaked in rain and secrets. The parking lot behind the gym was almost empty. The echo of laughter and music from the graduation dance faded as we sat in his car. Just me and Jake, windows fogged from the warm breath of everything we weren't supposed to be. I was still in my dress, soft blue silk with a tiny rip near the hem from when I tripped on the dance floor. My heels were off, my heart was racing, and Jake? He was leaning in, fingers brushing my cheek, eyes full of something that made me forget we were 1,000 kinds of wrong. "You're not my student anymore," he had whispered, as if trying to convince himself more than me. Then he kissed me. It wasn't our first kiss, but it was the first one that felt like we had crossed a line neither of us could step back from. It was hungry, aching, like we both knew it couldn't last but still wanted to taste it. Just once, completely. But then he pulled away, fast, like I'd burned him. His hand dropped from my face. He turned the engine on. The heat vanished in an instant. "Jake?" I asked, my voice shaking, lips still parted. He looked ahead, not at me. Rain pounded the windshield. "This was a mistake," he said flatly. "You'll forget me." I stared at him. "What?" He gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him together. "You're 17, Holly. You've got your whole life ahead of you. What happened between us?" He exhaled. "It never happened." "Don't do this," I said, the panic rising in my chest like bile. "You said, Jake, you said after graduation, we'd figure it out." I was wrong. His jaw clenched. "You'll see that one day. You'll thank me." The rain blurred everything outside. Streetlights bleeding into each other like tears on glass. But inside, I saw him crystal clear. The man I thought I loved. The man who'd whispered poetry to me in the back of the library and made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't just a girl with too many emotions and nowhere to put them. And now he was erasing it all. "You don't mean this," I whispered. He finally looked at me, and that was worse. Because his eyes didn't hold anger. They held guilt, regret. That's when I knew he wasn't lying. "I'm sorry," he said. I opened the door, not waiting to hear more. The rain hit me instantly, soaking my dress, my hair, my skin, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside me. Behind me, his car engine revved. I didn't turn around, I didn't watch him leave. But I heard it, the tires over wet pavement, fading into the night. I stood there, alone in the rain, mascara smudging, heart cracking, hands shaking. I thought I'd never recover, but I did. And I didn't forget. I became someone he wouldn't recognize. 10 years can turn heartbreak into memory, but not when it walks back into the room. I was folding laundry in my apartment when my mom called. She had that giddy, sing-song voice she only used for new boyfriends or holiday sales at Macy's. "Honey, I've got news," she said. "Big news. Are you sitting down?" I smiled. "I'm folding socks, does that count?" She giggled like a teenager. "I'm getting married." I froze, one sock hanging from my hand like punctuation. "Wait, seriously? To who?" "You haven't met him yet. His name's Robert. Robert Keller." The sock dropped. Keller. The name hit like a match to dry wood. It burned fast, hot, and left me standing in the ashes of a decade-old memory. "Mom," I said carefully, "does he have kids?" "One," she said. "A son. About your age, I think. Why?" Later that evening, I found myself in a cozy Italian restaurant, sitting across from my mother and her fiancé. The place was charming. Brick walls, candlelight, the kind of setting where you almost believe in second chances. Robert was lovely, that was the word. Warm smile, gentle voice, polite but not fake. I tried not to hate him for the name he shared with my past. And then the front door opened. The air changed. He stepped in like a shadow wearing a tailored coat. Hair darker now, a little longer, streaks of silver at his temples, his face more chiseled but still him. "Jake." He saw me instantly. Of course he did. His expression didn't shift, but something behind his eyes flinched. I held his gaze. I didn't blink. "Ah, there he is." Robert said brightly, standing to clap Jake on the shoulder. My son. Jake, this is Linda's daughter, Holly. Jake's mouth twitched. We've met? I laughed softly, sharp and short. Yeah, we've crossed paths. Mom and Robert looked between us, confused but smiling, as if nothing could possibly be wrong in a world full of tiramisu and love. Jake took the seat across from me. It was too small a table, too little forgiveness. I stirred my water glass just to give my hands something to do. So, Jake said finally, his voice lower, more grounded than I remembered. You're in the city now? I am, I replied, not offering more. He didn't deserve the updated version of my life, not yet. Robert was chatting away, telling stories of how he and my mother met on a hiking trail. Something about a sprained ankle and a thermos of coffee. I nodded in the right places, but my eyes kept flicking back to Jake. 10 years. And he still had that effect on me, the kind that left me breathless in the worst way. When dessert came, he finally looked at me, really looked. You look different, he said. So do you, I replied. Less guilt in the eyes, that got him. A flicker of something real crossed his face before he masked it again. Still sharp, he said. You should see me in a boardroom. The night ended with hugs and awkward goodbyes. My mom was glowing. Robert kissed her forehead. And Jake? Jake just stood there, watching me like I was still 17 and he didn't know what to do with me. But I wasn't 17. And this time, I knew exactly what I would do with him. As I stepped into the night air, clutching my coat against the sudden cold, I heard his voice behind me. Holly. I didn't turn around. Not yet. He wasn't just back in my life. He was moving into it. The rehearsal dinner was held at a fancy event space that tried very hard not to feel like a hotel ballroom. Edison bulbs dangled from the ceiling, fairy lights wrapped around the beams, and jazz music hummed softly in the background. It smelled like money and effort, the kind of effort that screamed, please ignore the family tension. I wore a satin emerald dress, simple and sharp, and I knew exactly how I looked when I walked in. Jake saw me first. His expression didn't change, but his grip on the glass in his hand tightened slightly. I smiled. Let the games begin. Mom was fluttering around, introducing people and laughing too hard at everything Robert said. They really were cute together, which only made the entire situation feel more surreal. Champagne? A voice said behind me. I turned and found myself looking at a tall guy with a crooked smile, and the kind of charm that didn't feel rehearsed. Michael, he said, handing me a glass. Cousin of the groom, friend of bad decisions. I laughed. Holly, daughter of the bride, collector of them, then we'll get along just fine. He winked. We talked, and by talked I mean flirted lightly, while pretending not to notice Jake watching us from across the room like a hawk in a tailored suit. Michael was fun. He didn't try too hard, didn't ask too much. Just offered warmth and humor and a perfectly timed compliment here and there, and I let him. Not because I needed the attention, but because Jake needed to see me getting it. At one point Michael leaned closer to whisper something, a joke I think, though I couldn't hear over the blood pounding in my ears, and suddenly Jake was there, right beside us, too fast, too close. You always did like attention, he said, his voice low but sharp. Michael blinked, confused. Sorry man, do we know each oth? She's just being polite, Jake added, ignoring him completely. His eyes locked on mine. I tilted my head and smiled, slow and deliberate. And you always liked control. That landed. Michael looked between us like he'd walked into a scene he didn't have the script for. I'm gonna go check on dessert. He left quickly. Smart guy. I turned back to Jake, arms crossed. Was that really necessary? He shrugged, but his jaw was tight. You know what you're doing, do I? I stepped closer. Funny. I spent years wondering if I actually meant anything to you, or if I was just another line you crossed and erased. He looked at me, something flickering in his eyes. Regret, maybe? Or memory. I never erased you, Holly. I blinked. That almost sounded like honesty. But not enough to matter. Well, I said, brushing past him. You're doing a great job acting like you did. I didn't wait for him to follow. I rejoined the party, laughing too loudly at Michael's next joke, sipping my champagne like it tasted better than truth. The night rolled on, toasts were made, cake was sampled, Mom cried happy tears, and Robert gave a speech that made everyone melt. Jake stayed quiet most of the night, at the edge of every conversation, watching, always watching. And just before I left, I caught him standing by the doorway, staring straight at me. He didn't say anything, but he didn't look away either. Then he turned and left, and I felt his absence like a slap. It was my turn. The microphone felt too cold in my hand, and the champagne in my other glass was a little too warm. The crowd quieted as I stepped up to the little platform, the fairy lights behind me casting a soft halo glow I absolutely did not deserve. I cleared my throat and smiled. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Holly, the bride's daughter. First and only, despite her best efforts at persuading me to give her grandchildren. Laughter. Mom beamed at me from her seat beside Robert, who was already dabbing his eyes like the sap he proudly was. I glanced at Jake. He sat at the edge of the crowd, one hand resting on his knee, the other wrapped too tightly around his whiskey glass. I smiled wider. I just want to say how happy I am for my mom, I continued. It's not easy to fall in love again, to take a risk, to trust someone with your heart, especially when you've been through enough. My voice softened, but I didn't look away from Jake. Love, real love, is messy, unpredictable. Sometimes it starts in the wrong place, at the wrong time. Sometimes it ends before it ever really begins. Jake didn't blink. And sometimes, I added lightly, you find your way back to it, older, wiser, and a little more careful with your words. A few guests murmured in agreement. Some smiled. Jake's jaw twitched. I lifted my glass. To my mother and Robert, may your story be the one that gets told for all the right reasons. Applause followed. My mom was crying again. I stepped down from the platform, handing off the mic, my heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon barefoot. As soon as I could, I slipped outside into the garden behind the banquet hall. The air was cooler, scented with roses and freshly cut grass. I leaned against the stone wall, grateful for the quiet. And then, of course, he followed me. Jake stepped out of the shadows like a plot twist no one wanted to read. You haven't changed, he said, voice low, hands in his pockets. I tilted my head, not moving from my spot. You're right, I said. I've grown up. He stopped a few feet from me, close enough to see the flicker in his eyes but far enough to keep the tension intact. I wasn't sure you'd even come tonight, I added. He shrugged. It's my dad's wedding, right, family? I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Funny how fast that word gets redefined. Jake exhaled slowly. I didn't know until last week that it was your mom. That's not the part that bothers me, I said. He nodded. I figured. There was a pause. One of those long, heavy silences that crept in when both people had too much to say and not enough courage to say it. I wanted to come back, he finally said. After graduation. I almost did. I looked at him, the softness in his voice disarming me more than I wanted to admit. But I didn't think I deserved to, he said. I hurt you. I knew it. And I thought staying away would make it easier. For you? I asked. For you? I laughed once. Not cruel but not kind either. You really don't know me at all. He looked down, then back up. I wanted to. The moonlight hit his face just enough to remind me of who he used to be. The teacher with soft hands and sharp words, who made me feel seen when I didn't even know what I was looking for. But I wasn't that girl anymore. You left me with questions, I said. And now you're back with answers I didn't ask for. Jake took a slow step forward. Then tell me what you want. I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure yet. The music was still echoing from the open doors of the reception hall, but out on the beach everything felt quieter, softer, like the night was holding its breath. Michael kicked off his shoes and walked beside me barefoot, the waves brushing the sand a few inches from our toes. Nice speech, he said after a beat. Sharp like everything else about you. I laughed. Is that your way of saying I sounded bitter? He grinned. No, just like someone who's been through some things and came out shinier. I looked up at the sky, at the stars smeared across it like spilled sugar. That's a kind way to put it. We walked in silence for a few moments. The cool breeze caught the hem of my dress, and I hugged my arms to my chest. Michael shrugged off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders without asking. I didn't stop him. You know, he said, voice quieter now. I didn't expect to meet someone like you at a wedding like this. Messy and complicated? No. Real? I turned to him, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. I'm not trying to get anything from you, Holly, he added. I just like you, and I think you've been looking over your shoulder all night, waiting for something to go wrong. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because he wasn't wrong. And if something feels right, he said, stepping closer, maybe you don't have to overthink it. He kissed me. It was warm and simple and unexpected. Not fire and lightning, just comfort, a slow, tentative connection, the kind that didn't hurt to accept. And for a moment I kissed him back, until something made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I turned, up the beach, standing near the edge of the dunes. A dark figure watched us. He didn't move, just stood there like some ghost that refused to vanish. I pulled back from Michael. He followed my gaze. Friend of yours? He asked. Something like that. Michael nodded slowly. Want me to walk you back? No, I said, stepping out of his jacket. Thanks, I think I need a minute. He smiled, gentle and understanding. I'll see you inside. When he was gone, I stood alone in the moonlight, the waves whispering secrets to the shore. And then Jake appeared. I didn't hear him approach, just felt it, the heat of him at my side. You shouldn't let him kiss you like that, he said, voice low and tight. I turned to him, arms crossed. Excuse me? He's not for you. I blinked. Wow. We're doing this? Really? Jake stepped closer. He doesn't know you. Not like I do. Oh, you mean the version of me that was 17 and stupid? His jaw tightened. Newsflash, Jake. You don't know me anymore. You gave up that right. He took another step forward. Close now. Too close. And you were for me? I asked, daring him to answer. He didn't. Because he couldn't. His hand lifted slightly, like he was going to touch my face, then stopped halfway. His fingers hovered near my cheek. I didn't move. We stood there in the tension, the past crackling between us like static, the almost touch burning more than contact ever could. And then I stepped back. No, I said, quiet but firm. You don't get to rewrite this. He looked like he wanted to argue, or explain, or beg. But he didn't. I turned and walked away before I could let him. The second-floor balcony was empty, lit only by the soft golden spill from the hallway behind me and the silvery sheen of the moon. Below, the last of the wedding guests were filtering out, their laughter rising like echoes from another world. I leaned against the railing, barefoot now, heels in hand. The wind tugged at the hem of my dress, cool against my skin, grounding me in the quiet. I needed the silence, which, of course, meant Jake would break it. His footsteps were soft, but I knew it was him before he spoke. He didn't say my name, just stepped beside me, hands resting on the rail, looking out at the dark horizon like it could answer the questions we never did. For a long time we said nothing. Then, finally, his voice. I never forgot you. I didn't look at him. You had a funny way of showing it. I know, he said. I deserved that. Another gust of wind blew between us, lifting a strand of hair across my face. I tucked it behind my ear, still not turning to him. I wanted to call, he said. So many times. I even started writing a letter once, but I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. I didn't, I said quietly. He nodded, like he expected that. I thought staying away would make things easier, safer, for who? For both of us, he admitted. But mostly for me. That surprised me. I glanced at him now. He looked older in the moonlight, not just in years, in weight. There were lines near his eyes I didn't remember, and his mouth had a curve to it that spoke of regret. "I lost my job," he said. "Not long after graduation. Someone saw us, or thought they did. There were rumors, questions. I denied everything, but I knew they didn't believe me." I inhaled slowly. "They couldn't prove anything, so they let me resign quietly. But my record? It was ruined. Took me years to get back on my feet. And you blamed me?" "No," he said quickly. "Never. That was on me. I crossed a line. You were everything I told myself I couldn't have, and I went there anyway." I finally turned to him. "So what now? You want forgiveness?" He shook his head. "No, I don't expect that. I needed you to know the truth." "I wanted to hate you," I said. The words came out like they'd been waiting for years, sharp and heavy. "I still might." He looked at me, eyes filled with something raw and unguarded. "Then hate me right here," he said. "Just don't disappear again." We stood like that, eyes locked, our breaths visible in the night air like ghosts between us. There were so many things I could have said, should have said. But I didn't. Because I didn't know what I wanted more, closure or revenge, a kiss or a door slammed shut. Instead, I stepped away from the railing, from him. I didn't run. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked inside, leaving the door open behind me, letting him decide if he still had the courage to follow. The morning of the wedding was too quiet. I sat in the dressing room, surrounded by curls of ribbon, garment bags, and untouched pastries. Mom's dress hung on the back of the door like a reminder that the day was hers, and that everything else could wait. But my thoughts were loud. I hadn't slept. My conversation with Jake on the balcony played in a loop, every word echoing in my head. I hated how much it still mattered. How much he still mattered. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The makeup artist had done a beautiful job, polished, soft, glowing. But the woman in the mirror looked like someone trying too hard to seem unbothered. A knock on the door pulled me out of it. "Michael. Am I allowed to see the non-bride?" he said with a playful grin, holding a to-go coffee in one hand. "Brought caffeine as a peace offering." I managed a smile and took the cup. "Thanks. You're officially forgiven for being charming last night." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching me with those honest eyes of his. "I'm heading out after the ceremony," he said gently. "Flight to catch, back to reality?" I asked. He nodded. "Something like that." There was a pause. One of those in-between silences. "I like you, Holly," he said. "You're strong, a little terrifying, in the best way." I laughed quietly. "But," he added more seriously, "whatever it is between you and Jake, don't let fear ruin it again. Not if there's still something real left." That hit harder than I expected. "I'm not afraid," I said. He smiled. "Maybe not, but you're careful. Sometimes that's just fear wearing nicer shoes." I didn't answer. Just stood and gave him a quick, sincere hug. "Thanks, Michael." He kissed the side of my head. "Take care of yourself. And maybe, give him a chance to explain the things he still hasn't." With that, he was gone. The ceremony was beautiful. The church was filled with sunlight and flowers, the air thick with perfume and whispered emotion. Mom looked radiant, and Robert couldn't stop smiling even when he fumbled his vows. People laughed, cried, clapped. I watched them say "I do," and for a second, I felt like maybe happy endings weren't such a scam after all. Until I noticed the empty chair. Jake's. I scanned the room, nothing. Then I saw the side door, just slightly ajar, and I knew. The garden behind the church was quiet. The guests were still inside, wrapped in post-vow euphoria. Jake stood near the trees, hands in his pockets, his back to me. The wind rustled the leaves like it was trying to fill the silence he left behind. "You always leave before the best part," I said, stepping closer. He turned, startled, but not surprised. "I didn't want to ruin it," he said. "You didn't." He looked down. "I just couldn't watch two people promise forever when I couldn't even give you a proper goodbye." "You gave me silence," I said. "That's worse than goodbye." He didn't argue. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. How to be near you and not want to fix what I broke. I swallowed hard. Maybe it's not about fixing. Maybe it's about finally telling the truth, to each other, and to ourselves. His eyes met mine, and for the first time since that night 10 years ago, I saw something in him that looked like surrender. Not weakness, just real. The greenhouse behind the church was nearly hidden by ivy and silence. I found the door half open, the warm, damp air inside laced with the scent of roses, soil, and thyme. Sunlight poured through the glass ceiling in golden beams, painting everything in soft, forgiving light. Jake stood in the middle, surrounded by green. He turned as I entered, his eyes wide for a second, like he didn't think I'd come. "I figured you'd be gone by now," he said. "I almost was." We stood there, the air between us full of everything we hadn't said for 10 years, and everything we'd been afraid to admit over the past few days. I took a slow breath. "I'm not that girl anymore," I said, voice steady. "If you want anything with me now, you'll have to meet me where I am, not where I was." Jake didn't blink. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate, closing the distance without crowding it. "I know that," he said. "I see it in everything you do, in how you stand, how you look at me like I'm a page from an old book you've already read, and don't quite trust." That made me laugh, just once. It surprised both of us. "But if there's still a chance," he took one more step, "then let me start now." He paused, and then he said my name, Holly. It wasn't casual. It wasn't careless. It was tender, as if he'd been holding it in his mouth all this time, waiting for the moment it wouldn't burn. I looked at him, really looked. The man he was now, older, flawed but no longer running. "Say it again," I said quietly. "Holly." That time, it broke something in me. I stepped forward, not running, not forgiving everything, just ready. His hand brushed my face like he was afraid I'd disappear again, but I didn't. We kissed. It wasn't like the ones before. Not rushed or forbidden or stolen in the dark. It was real, grounded, slow. When we pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "I'm not going to vanish this time," he said. "I'll show up. I'll earn it." I smiled, soft, unsure but true. "You're not my teacher anymore, and you're not my student." "Good," I said. "Because this time we're writing something new." He pulled me into an embrace, warm and solid and steady. And for the first time in years, I let myself lean in. Not because I needed saving, but because I chose to stay. We stood there, surrounded by light and green, and years we couldn't get back. And maybe that was okay. Because this time, we were finally starting on my terms. My rules now.